We live in interesting times.
For the headlines.
Thousands of civilians fled airstrikes and shelling as Syria's Kurds battled to hold off a Turkish invasion, with fears mounting of a developing humanitarian crisis.
Japan braces for super typhoon Hagibis. Our ABC correspondent Tyra Liu reports.
More than 1 million Californians were without electricity due to preemptive blackouts, but localized fires broke out as hot, windy conditions spread south toward Los Angeles.
Suspected missile strikes hit an Iranian oil tanker near the Saudi coast.
I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. Thousands of civilians fled airstrikes and shelling as Syria's Kurds battled to hold off a Turkish invasion, with fears mounting of a developing humanitarian crisis. U.S. President Donald Trump tried to justify the de facto green light he gave his Turkish counterpart, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, for an assault seen as a blatant betrayal of Washington's erstwhile Kurdish allies. Later, President Trump suggested that Washington could mediate between Turkey and Kurdish groups, and a U.S. official said President Trump has asked American diplomats to broker a ceasefire.
But from now on, we want to fight where it is to the benefit of the United States of America, not to the benefit of other countries. And we will only fight to win. We're only going to fight to win. We don't fight to win. We don't fight to win. The Turks have been fighting with the Kurds for 2 centuries. And Turkey, as you know, is a NATO ally. But I've been rough on them. We've defeated 100% of that ISIS caliphate and no longer have any troops in the area. We don't have any troops. The troops have been pulled out, where Turkey is carrying out now a very tough campaign against the Kurds. Get them out. We were supposed to be in Syria for 30 days. We've now been there for 10 years. We were supposed to be in Afghanistan for a short period of time. We're now going to be there for close to 19 years. It's time to bring them home. It's time to bring them home.
But international condemnation of the Turkish assault was overwhelming, and the response to the operation was discussed in an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. UN Chief Antonio Guterres expressed deep concern over the violence, while the Council's 5 European members urged Turkey to cease the unilateral military action.
I want to express my deep concern about the escalation of conflict we are witnessing in eastern Syria. You cannot have a peacekeeping force where there is no peace to keep. A peacekeeping force is always the result of a political agreement. And of course, if there is a political agreement and there is peace to keep, a peacekeeping force has an important role to play. We are not yet there, I believe. So at the present moment, what we must is to make sure that we have a de-escalation of the conflict in Syria. And of course, I'm worried that any solution for Syria will need to respect the sovereignty, the territorial integrity, and the unity of Syria.
We call upon Turkey to cease the unilateral military action, as we do not believe it will address Turkey's underlying security concerns. Renewed armed hostilities in the northeast will further undermine the stability of the whole region, exacerbate civilian suffering, and provoke further displacements, which will further increase the number of refugees and IDPs in Syria and in the region.
Now, in scenes all too familiar since the start of Syria's war in March 2011, civilians were seen abandoning their homes in vehicles or on foot with their belongings on their backs. The UN's Office for the Coordination of Human Rights, or Human Affairs rather, estimated that 70,000 people have been newly displaced since Ankara launched its operation.
Meanwhile, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has expressed serious concerns on Friday about Turkey's ongoing operation against Kurdish forces in Syria and called for restraint. Stoltenberg emphasized that Turkey was an important part of the NATO alliance, but said the operation in Syria, which began on Wednesday, should not undermine gains against the Islamic State group.
I count on Turkey to show restraint and to ensure that their actions in northern Syria are measured and proportionate and avoid even more human suffering. We have to remember that we need to continue to stand together in our common fight against the common enemy, which is ISIS.
Turkey considers the Kurdish People's Protection Units in northern Syria a terrorist offshoot of Kurdish insurgents in its own territory. It wants a 30-kilometer wide buffer zone along the border, which can also serve as an area to repatriate millions of Syrian refugees currently living in Turkey.
In related news, EU Council President Donald Tusk condemned as attempted blackmail a threat by the Turkish president to allow millions of refugees to head to Europe if the bloc criticizes Ankara's offensive in Syria. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan made his comments on Thursday in the face of mounting condemnation from European governments of Ankara's long-threatened operation to enforce a buffer zone in northeastern Syria to accommodate some of the 3.6 million refugees currently living in Turkey. Let's listen in.
Ey Avrupa Birliği! Kendinize gelin. Bak yine söylüyorum. Bizim şu andaki operasyonumuzu bir işgal hareketi diye nitelendirmeye çalışırsanız işimiz kolay. Kapıları açarız. 3,6 milyon mülteciyi sizlere göndeririz.
Turkey's unilateral military operation in northern Syria is of grave concern and should stop. Turkey's security concerns should be addressed through political and diplomatic means. A military intervention will only make matters worse. Instead of creating stability, it will create even more instability in the whole region, exacerbate civilian suffering, cause further displacement, and threaten progress achieved by the global coalition against Daesh. The Kurdish forces that have been part of the Syrian Democratic Forces have been and are crucial in fighting Daesh. For both sides of the Atlantic, abandoning them is not only a bad idea, as President Trump said, but raises many questions, both of strategic and moral nature. Turkey must understand that our main concern is that their actions may lead to another humanitarian catastrophe, which would be unacceptable. Nor will we ever accept that refugees are weaponized and used to blackmail us. That is why I consider yesterday's threats made by President Erdogan totally out of place.
Under a 2016 agreement with the EU, Turkey agreed to prevent refugees from leaving towards Europe in exchange for €6 billion and visa-free travel for its citizens, but has frequently criticized the lack of assistance from Brussels.
Counter-terrorism officers are leading an investigation into an incident in Manchester, northwest England, in which 5 people were stabbed in a shopping center, police said on Friday. Given the location of the incident and its nature, officers from Counter-Terrorism Police Northwest are leading the investigation as we determine the circumstances, Greater Manchester Police said. Adding, a man in his 40s was arrested.
Meanwhile, more than 1 million Californians were without electricity due to preemptive blackouts Thursday, but localized fires broke out as hot, windy conditions spread south towards Los Angeles. Some 600,000 customers in Northern California were in the dark after Pacific Gas Electric began switching off power the previous day in a bid to prevent a repeat of last year's catastrophic inferno, which killed 86 people. The power cuts enabled utility companies to inspect high-voltage lines for damage during particularly flammable conditions caused by high winds and dry vegetation. With high-risk red flag winds spreading to the Los Angeles area further south, around 13,000 customers of Southern California, Edison, also had their electricity cut Thursday. Meanwhile, firefighting planes and helicopters were called in to tackle a fire east of Los Angeles, which spread to 500 acres and was described by officials as not contained. Schools and universities closed, and people have been stocking up on gasoline, water, batteries, and other basics, with frustration mounting at blackouts condemned by some as third world. Last November, PGE's faulty power lines were determined to have sparked the deadliest wildfire in the state's modern history, which killed 86 and destroyed the town of Paradise.
I think they have no choice but to power down, to guard against liability. Yeah, it's a terrible inconvenience. I'm here helping a friend who owns a restaurant who needs a generator in order to keep all of her inventory frozen and cold. So the financial consequences for small business owners are extraordinary.
Yes, this is like living in a third world country. I've been to Eastern Europe, and I would expect power outages and this type of thing in a third world country. I would not expect that here in the United States and not in California. And how people are reacting to this is thinking this is normal. It's absolutely not.
So as a community, it's difficult. We're all buying generators and we're cooking up that way. We're using more solar, and like these guys are on a generator and solar. So it's just something we're going to have to live with until they are able to figure out ways to put power underground and keep that from being impacted by wind.
U.S. President Donald Trump says the Democrats know they can't win the 2020 election, so they're pursuing the insane impeachment witch hunt.
So they know they can't win the 2020 election. So they're pursuing the insane impeachment witch hunt. I've been going through it now. The do-nothing Democrat extremists have gone so far left that they believe it should not be a crime to cross our border illegally, and it should be a crime to have a totally appropriate, casual, beautiful, accurate phone call with a foreign leader. I don't think so. Now think of it. Where's Hunter? Okay, get it. So where is Hunter? I want to see Hunter ask these questions. Hunter, you know nothing about energy. You know nothing about China. You know nothing about anything, frankly. Hunter, you're a loser. Why did you get $1.5 billion, Hunter? And your father was never considered smart. He was never considered a good senator. He was only a good vice president because he understood how to kiss Barack Obama's
and protesters clashed Thursday night outside the Target Center after a rally for President Donald Trump. The protest began in the afternoon with various immigrant, women's and anti-war groups assembling against the president as Trump supporters lined to center the venue. Demonstrators blew whistles, chanted and drummed early in the gathering before tensions rose later in the night.
Two foreign-born businessmen linked to efforts by President Donald Trump's lawyer Rudy Giuliani to get Ukraine to investigate 2020 Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden have been arrested on charges of violating U.S. campaign finance laws. Lev Parnas, a U.S. citizen who was born in Ukraine, and Igor Fruman, a U.S. citizen who was born in Belarus, were taken into custody on Wednesday on charges brought by New York prosecutors and are to appear in court in Alexandria, Virginia. On Thursday, Democrats in the House of Representatives, meanwhile, issued subpoenas for the two men, ordering them to produce documents and testify in the impeachment inquiry opened into President Trump for pressuring Ukraine to investigate Biden and his son, Hunter, who served on the board of a Ukrainian gas company. Now, the 20-page indictment outlining the charges faced by the two men was released by Geoffrey Berman, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Foreign nationals are barred from contributing to U.S. election campaigns, and Parnas and Fruman are alleged to have funneled funds into President Trump's 2020 re-election campaign and other campaigns from a person identified in the indictment as Foreign National-1, a Russian citizen and businessman who was seeking to obtain retail marijuana licenses in the U.S. Foreign National-1 is alleged to have given them a total of $1 million in two $500,000 installments in September of 2018 and October of 2018. Let's listen in.
Today, we unseal an indictment charging Lev Parnas, Igor Fruman, and two co-defendants for their alleged participation in schemes to violate the federal campaign finance laws by repeatedly using straw donors and foreign money. As alleged in the indictment, the defendants broke the law to gain political influence while avoiding disclosure of who was actually making the donations and where the money was coming from. They sought political influence not only to advance their own financial interests, but to advance the political interests of at least one foreign official, a Ukrainian government official who sought the dismissal of the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. Parnas and Fruman had several meetings with Congressman One, and at these meetings, Parnas, on behalf of a Ukrainian government official, lobbied Congressman One to advocate for the removal of the then U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. Protecting the integrity of our elections and protecting our elections from unlawful foreign influence are core functions of our campaign finance laws. And as this office has made clear, we will not hesitate to investigate and prosecute those who engage in criminal conduct that draws into question the integrity of our political process.
I don't know those gentlemen. Now, it's possible I have a picture with them because I have a picture with everybody. I have a picture with everybody here. But somebody said there may be a picture or something where at a fundraiser or somewhere. But I have pictures with everybody.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Tungkulin ng MTRCV ang mag-provide na
I am Leo Aquino, EBC correspondent from Vancouver, Canada, and I am standing here in front of the Olympic Cauldron located in the downtown Vancouver. Did you know that the 2010 Winter Olympic was hosted in Vancouver? Make sure to tune in to Digital Nest every Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. I am Leo Aquino, and I am 1 for 25.
The National Basketball Association, or NBA, said Friday it had canceled all remaining scheduled press events for its pre-season games in China, citing the complicated and unprecedented controversy over Hong Kong protests and free speech. We have decided not to hold media availability for our teams for the remainder of our trip in China, the NBA said in a statement. They have been placed into a complicated and unprecedented situation while abroad, and we believe it would be unfair to ask them to address these matters in real time. An NBA representative told AFP that the second of two games in China between the Los Angeles Lakers and Brooklyn Nets, set for Saturday night in the southern city of Shenzhen, was still expected to proceed as planned. The two teams played their first game in Shanghai on Thursday. Broadcasters earlier dropped plans to air the two games in China in protest. The annual China Exhibition Games have been dogged by controversy since a Houston Rockets executive's expression of support for Hong Kong pro-democracy protests sparked a fierce Chinese backlash. The row has caused the NBA's Chinese sponsors to cut ties in protest. It has developed into yet another irritant in the fractious U.S.-China relationship after leading U.S. politicians urged the NBA to ditch all activities in China in retaliation. The NBA had already canceled a series of planned promotional events and press conferences in Shanghai as the feud reached a fever pitch.
Meanwhile, around 1,000 Hong Kongers, mostly office workers, hit the streets in the city center during Friday lunch hour in support of the protest movement. Let's take a look.
Indonesian leader Joko Widodo ordered beefed-up security measures Friday after two militants from an IS-linked terror group stabbed his chief security minister with a politician in hospital recovering from emergency surgery. Police were searching for more suspects in the wake of the assassination attempt on Wiranto, a 72-year-old former army chief who goes by one name. The minister was knifed twice in the stomach as he left his vehicle in Pandeglang on Java Island during an official visit on Thursday. A 31-year-old man and a 21-year-old woman, reportedly a married couple, were arrested at the scene. They were later identified as members of Jamaah Ansarut Daulah, or JAD, an extremist network loyal to the Islamic State group. Widodo said he had ordered the National Police and Intelligence Agency chiefs to pursue other suspects within JAD which was responsible for several previous attacks, including deadly suicide bombings at churches in Indonesia's second biggest city, Surabaya, last year.
In other news, suspected missile strikes hit an Iranian oil tanker off the Saudi coast on Friday, according to its owner. The first Iranian vessel targeted since a spate of attacks in the Gulf, Washington, blamed on Tehran. The National Iranian Tanker Company, which owns the ship, said the hull of the Sabiti was hit by two separate explosions off the Saudi port of Jeddah, saying they were probably caused by missile strikes. Oil prices surged more than 2% on the news, which raised fresh supply concerns, with tension still high after last month's attacks on Saudi crude facilities. The blast come just weeks after two of Saudi Arabia's biggest oil installations were hit, wiping out 5% of global production. Iran's foreign ministry said the tanker was attacked from a location close to the corridor it was passing east of the Red Sea, stopping short of naming Saudi Arabia.
Angry farmers stormed a city hall in southern Mexico, seized the mayor and dragged him through town from the back of a pickup truck in protest, officials said Wednesday. The incident occurred Tuesday when dozens of members of the Toholabal indigenous community, armed with clubs, broke into the mayor's office in the town of Las Margaritas in the state of Chiapas. Witnesses told investigators they tied up the mayor, Jorge Luis Escandon, pushed him outside and tied him to the back of a pickup. They then dragged him several dozen meters down the street before police and public employees intervened and freed Escandon, who survived without major injury. A mayor accused his attackers of trying to extort him. Around 50 or 60 people came in 3 pickup trucks armed with clubs and looking to kidnap city officials to extort us and get what they've always wanted, to be given money, he told AFP. They started struggling, carrying me, tied up one foot and dragged me out of my office to the street, he said. State Prosecutor Jorge Luis Liavin said the attackers were demanding more public resources, including direct cash transfers, and their rural community, Santa Rita El Invernadero. Leftist President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador has introduced a policy of providing public assistance in the form of cash payments to beneficiaries in order to stem corruption by cutting out bureaucratic middlemen. 11 people were arrested and a dozen injured in the melee.
To Colombia now, where students and riot police clashed in Bogota after thousands of students marched to demand better funding on education. Take a look. The Colombian National Police fired tear gas on students in Bogota who were protesting corruption in public universities and demanding compliance with agreements signed in 2018 to increase the state budget for higher education. Several students threw rocks and bottles and kicked guards who protected the Supreme Court of Justice. The Bogota student protest began 2 weeks ago after allegations that the rector of Bogota's Francisco Jose de Caldas District University was at the center of a corruption network that surfaced on September 22.
Hailed as a visionary and reformer, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed won the Nobel Peace Prize on Friday for his efforts to resolve the long-running conflict with neighboring foe Eritrea. Here's Berit Reis Anderson, chair of the Norwegian Nobel Committee.
As Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed has sought to promote reconciliation, solidarity and social justice. However, many challenges remain unresolved. Ethnic strife continues to escalate, And we have seen troubling examples of this in recent weeks and months. No doubt, some people will think this year's prize is being awarded too early. The Norwegian Nobel Committee believes it is now that Abiy Ahmed's efforts deserve recognition and need encouragement. The Norwegian Nobel Committee hopes that the Nobel Prize will strengthen Prime Minister Abiy in his important work for peace and reconciliation. With the provisions of Alfred Nobel's will firmly in mind, the Norwegian Nobel Committee sees Abiy Ahmed as the person who, in the preceding year, has done the most to deserve the Nobel Peace Prize for 2019.
Now, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has been awarded the 2019 Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to resolve his country's conflict with bitter foe Eritrea. Here's a brief background.
Abiy Ahmed became Prime Minister of Ethiopia in April 2018 as the country emerged from 25 years of authoritarian rule. A member of the country's largest ethnic group, he is the first Oromo person to occupy the office. His first year and a half in power has seen this son of poor villagers initiate sweeping reforms across Africa's second most populous nation. One of his first priorities was to attempt to put an end to a bitter and long-running conflict with neighbouring Eritrea.
With regard to the conflict with Eritrea, which has lasted for years, we want to see an end to it, for the common good of our two nations, not only for our benefit, but for both these nations which are tied by blood. We are ready to settle our differences through discussion. We invite the Eritrean government to display the same sentiments.
In July 2018, a peace accord was signed, and the border between the countries reopened. Ahmed also ordered the release of thousands of political prisoners. But since then, optimism has given way to frustration, with the Eritrean border shutting once more. And in many regions of the country, people still live in fear of violence between rival ethnic groups.
Assuring peace in Ethiopia is the government's core duty. One of the ways of getting there is to deal with potential conflict zones and assure a lasting peace. The current conflicts in Ethiopia must be resolved, but we have no fear that they will compromise the reforms which are underway. The reforms have been led by the people, and indeed are led by the people, so they will not stop.
Abiy Ahmed will be keen to make further advances in both his domestic and foreign agendas ahead of elections scheduled for May 2020.
Preparations are currently taking place in Japan, where they're expecting Super Typhoon Hagibis to hit on Saturday. Here is Tyra Lu.
As Super Typhoon Hagibis threatens eastern Japan, people in the area take several measures to prepare them for the worst to come. Several shelves in local supermarkets ran out of merchandise and goods as residents started panic buying few days before the typhoon's forecasted arrival to hit the greater Kanto area on Saturday. I am here in front of a local supermarket here in western Tokyo. Let's check the situation inside and see how people are preparing for the super typhoon. Meat products, bottled water, bread, noodles, and other ready-to-eat and basic food products are some of the items most people bought to prepare them for a couple of days.
Ang paghahanda po namin sa ganitong mga sitwasyon tulad po ng paparating na bagyo ay bumili na po kami ng aming pong mga pangailangan tulad po ng mga hindi po nasisirang pagkain, mga kailangan po ng mga bata, yung pong flashlight, mga radyo, kung ano man pong kailangan sa ganitong mga sakuna. Kaya sa ganitong mga kalamidad ay maging aware po tayo, mga kapatid, mga kababayan. Huwag po tayong maging kampante dahil malakas po ang typhoon na ito. Dahil po nagbabala na rin po sa amin pong mga trabaho na hindi bihira ang ganitong mga klase po ng mga kababayan. Kaya manalig tayo, patuloy tayong manalangin sa Panginoong Diyos na malampasan natin ang lahat ng mga ganitong mga kalamidad. Wala po sanang mapapahamak at sama-sama tayo mga kababayan, mga kapatid, na manalangin na wala pong mangyayaring masama sa bansang ito. Sana po ay maging aware po tayong lahat at magkaroon po tayo ng panahon na makapaghanda rin para hindi po tayo mabigla pagdating ng ganitong mga kalamidad.
In Ome City in western Tokyo, we talked to some teachers in this public daycare for graders. They said it's a very strong typhoon, so as to ensure safety, they remove all objects outside the building. All service bicycles, tents, pool, bamboo pools, among others, were moved inside one of the classrooms. Even garbage were securely tied in a safe location. Screen doors were removed as well to prevent them from being blown away. The Japan Meteorological Agency, or JMA, said Hagibis is classed as a violent typhoon, the highest category on Japan's typhoon scale. They predict Hagibis could weaken slightly as it churns over cool waters and that it will be above or near the greater Tokyo area on Saturday evening as a very strong typhoon, the second highest category. The area will start to see waves and rain intensifying Friday night. Reporting from Tokyo, Japan, this is Tyranel Pililu for Eagle News International, and I am 1 with 25.
Thank you,
care,
Tyra.
guys.
Yeah. We'll be back with more news right after this break. Stay tuned.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. Open for Business, from vision to action.
Soccer, the world's favorite sport. And it's no wonder. Spectacular goals. And plenty of emotion. The best of game day. Kickoff.
Welcome back. Oil surged on Friday after an Iranian tanker was hit by suspected missile strikes off the coast of Saudi Arabia, sparking fresh conflict fears 1 month after attacks on Saudi oil facilities that were blamed by Washington on Tehran. The national Iranian tanker company, which owns the ship, revealed that the hull of the Sabiti was hit by 2 separate explosions off the Saudi coast, saying they were probably caused by missile strikes. Brent and New York crude contracts were catapulted more than 2% higher as the news flashed across traders' screens just after 0600 GMT, ratcheting up geopolitical and supply tensions in the crude-rich tinderbox Gulf region. Friday's blasts could escalate quickly and spell more global economic turmoil, according to Nordea markets analyst Tina Margrethe Saltvedt. She warned, quote, prices could spike even higher in the event of a major upscaling in military activity, and especially if we see any more drone or military attacks on oil installations in the area. The September 14 attacks on Aramco plants in Abqaiq and Kurais, which initially halved the kingdom's crude output, has also set the market alight. Washington concluded that the September strikes were launched from Iranian soil and that cruise missiles were used, but Tehran denies involvement. The attacks were claimed by Yemen's Houthi rebels.
The fallout from the Carlos Ghosn continues with the ousting of Renault CEO Thierry Bolloré, a scheduled board meeting. Ghosn, who became a legendary figure in Japan after spearheading the turnaround of Nissan from near bankruptcy in 1999, resigned as chairman and CEO of Renault in January 2019 after being accused of false accounting and fraud. The move to replace Bolloré is being seen as an effort to draw a line under the Ghosn affair. Renault has named Clotilde Delbos, the French automaker's current chief financial officer, as its CEO for an interim period.
To Brexit now, the European Union's chief Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier, said that a breakfast talk he had with his British counterpart was constructive, but he played down hopes of a rapid agreement. Take a look.
We had a constructive meeting with Steve Barclay, the British team, and now I'm going to debrief the 27 ambassadors and the Brexit steering group of the Parliament. But as already said, that the Brexit is like climbing a mountain. We need vigilance, determination, and patience.
I think that this is the breakthrough.
Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar says after a meeting with British counterpart Boris Johnson that it is possible to reach a Brexit deal by the end of October, but remains cautious with just days left to strike an agreement.
I think it is possible for us to come to an agreement to have a treaty agreed to allow the UK to leave the EU in an orderly fashion and to have that done by the end of October. But there is many a slip between cup and lip and lots of things that are not in my control. There are, of course, issues yet to be fully resolved. The first is the issue of consent and democracy, ensuring that any long-term arrangement that applies to Northern Ireland has the consent of the people of Northern Ireland. The second is the whole issue of customs, ensuring that there is no customs border between North and South. So next steps, of course, are for the United Kingdom government to engage with the European Commission. We expect that will happen tomorrow with a meeting involving Stephen Barclay and Michel Barnier, and also we'll need to consult and engage with the Commission as well. But what I would hope is that what's happened today will be sufficient to allow negotiations to resume in Brussels.
Sure. Time is running out to sign off on any deal at an October 17 to 18 European Union summit, the last such meeting before Britain's scheduled departure from the European Union at the end of the month. The main sticking point in the divorce deal is how to keep open the border between the British province of Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic, a member of the EU. Johnson has vowed Britain will end its 5-decade membership of the EU on October 31 with or without agreeing exit terms. But he could be forced to seek to delay Brexit for a third time if he fails to agree a deal by next week's summit, thanks to a law passed by rebellious MPs last month.
Meanwhile, the president of the European Council, Donald Tusk, said during a press conference in the Cypriot capital Nicosia that a no-deal Brexit will never be the choice of the EU. Again, let's listen in.
Prime Minister Johnson promised the EU to come forward with a solution that would work for all, a solution that would not only satisfy the hardcore Brexiteers, but also solve our well-known and legitimate objectives: to avoid a hard border on the island of Ireland, to protect the Good Friday Agreement, and to ensure the integrity of the single market. Unfortunately, we are still in a situation in which the UK has not come forward with a workable, realistic proposal. A week ago, I told Prime Minister Johnson that if there was no such proposal by today, I would announce publicly that there are no more chances, because of objective reasons, for a deal during the incoming European Council. However, yesterday when the Irish Taoiseach and the UK Prime Minister met, they both saw for the first time a pathway to a deal. I have received promising signals from the Taoiseach that a deal is still possible. Technical talks are taking place in Brussels as we speak. Of course, there is no guarantee of success and the time is practically up. But even the slightest chance must be used. A no-deal Brexit will never be the choice of the EU.
SpaceX CEO Elon Musk and NASA Chief Jim Bridenstine reaffirmed their commitment to send American astronauts into space in early 2020. Human spaceflight is the reason that SpaceX was created, says billionaire Musk. Watch this.
Space is one of those things that I think almost everyone is inspired by, and if you asked people what was the most inspiring event in history, it was probably landing on the moon. You know, if you ask people anywhere, I'd say human spaceflight is the reason that SpaceX was created, and we're incredibly honored to partner with NASA and to make this happen.
All right, let's now focus on sports. Here's Ben Bernaldez.
The Philippine Sports Commission, in partnership with Milo Philippines, Philippine Olympic Commission, and the Philippine Southeast Asian Games Organizing Committee officially announced their campaign for the 30th Southeast Asian Games this coming November, held at the Conrad Hotel, Manila. The collaborative effort reinforces Milo's commitment to the advancement of local sports and a promise to energize the entire Team Pilipinas to become champions. Present at the press conference were Veronica Cruz, Vice President for Nestle Philippines Milo, Lester P. Castillo, Assistant Vice President for Nestle Philippines Milo, Honorable Abraham Bambol Tolentino, President of the Philippine Olympic Committee, Ramon Fernandez, Commissioner for Philippine Sports Commission, in behalf of PSC Chairman and SEA Games Chef de Mission William Butch Ramirez, who shared a common goal of rallying the nation to support the athletes representing the country under One Laban Pilipinas battle cry. Joining them were national athletes and Milo Sports Program graduates and ambassadors like Eliza Valdez of volleyball, Pauline Lopez of Philippine Taekwondo Association, and Kiefer Rabena of basketball, who each shared their own inspirational stories of starting out in Milo Sports Program at a very young age and now representing the country in a global stage. They also harp on the positive effect that the crowd's energy can have on them during competition. This year's theme and motto, "We Win as One," celebrates unity in diversity and heralds the importance of teamwork and sportsmanship among Filipinos and neighboring countries in the region.
And as the Philippines hosts the 30th SEA Games, Milo will once again help organize the athletes, teams, and sports communities in their preparations. Also, Milo will help rally millions of Filipinos that will be rooting and cheering them on as we defend our home court. Asahan nyo, nakasama ang POC, PSC at FISGOC, lalaban ang Milo kasama ang bawat isa sa ating mga atletang Pilipino upang makapagbigay ng karangalan sa ating bansa.
Philippine Sports Commission Chairman and SEA Games Chef de Mission Butch Ramirez sent his message to PSC Commissioner Ramon Fernandez.
As the heart of every sporting endeavor, our athletes are our top priority. Our athletes reflect how we uphold the value of sports as a nation. This is why we are grateful for the initiatives pulled by different stakeholders, sectors, and volunteers to support our athletes. This media launch of the 30th Southeast Asian Games is one of the efforts testifying to this unity. As Filipinos, as a sporting nation, and as believers of the good that sports can foster for the world, let us continue keeping this spirit alive. Let us win as one. Mabuhay laban atletang Pilipino.
Meanwhile, despite the delay in the approval of Congress for the budget of the 30th SEA Games hosting of the country, House Speaker and FISGOC Chairman Alan Peter Cayetano assured that every venues and facilities will be finished and on time for the opening of the 30th SEA Games.
Well, kung ano ang sinasabi sa atin ng athletes, yun din ang lesson sa mga government officials. Prepare, prepare, prepare. So sinasabi na ng FISGOC during the time na ang Kongreso nag-aaway na pag na-delay ang budget, madidelay ito lahat at hindi lang madidelay yung sports facilities, pati yung mga tulay, kalye, mga infrastructure programs na importante sa ating bansa. So it's not time for excuses. So ginagawa naman namin ang lahat na makakaya para advance pa tayo. I think at the end of the month naman, most if not all of the venues will be finished. But nakita naman natin, katulad sa Clark, yung mga nag-prepare in advance at saka yung on time yung funding, nagawa lahat. But actually marami pang behind the scenes na hindi nakikita talaga ng publiko na naghahabulan talaga. You know, minsan magpapirma lang ng cheque takes 2 to 3 weeks. So it's just a lesson to us whether it's in the bureaucracy or in the budgeting or preparing for sports events, di ba? Dapat win as one, pero kailangan yung preparation maganda talaga.
The congressman from Taguig also promised there will be a positive outcome once the game starts.
The positive is once na ma-broadcast, makikita nyo world-class yung facilities. Makikita nyo rin yung mga athletes natin na had almost nothing to train with. Pero I really sincerely believe that many of them are going to win gold medals. So, and like anything else, it's the Filipino spirit. So, to God's grace and mercy, despite lahat ng trials, pinagdaanan, lahat ng kulang, ang Pilipino humahanap ng paraan. And I think in the same way that Manny Pacquiao and other world champions, other Filipino world champions have given pride to the country. Come November 30 sa opening pa lang, and then come December 11 sa closing, we'll not only be proud na we hosted SEA Games, but we'll be proud to be Filipinos.
Congressman Cayetano also mentioned the opening ceremonies at the Philippine Arena is a spectacle to watch.
Maganda po ang preparation. Alam naman po natin na napakaganda po ng venue. World-class po yung venue at lahat po ng nakapagkaroon ng event doon ay talagang nabibilib at na-impress. So, tutumbasan din po natin ng isang world-class na opening ceremonies. Ang ginamit po natin na nanalo sa bidding po ng mag-aayos nito ay may experience sa ibang international games including for yung ibang Olympics.
The 30th SEA Games is from the 30th of November to the 11th of December. As the host, the much-awaited sporting event, the Philippines aims to hold the largest SEA Games ever with 56 sports, an estimated 9,840 athletes and team officials, 2,050 technical officials, 1,500 press and media attendees, 12,000 volunteers, targeting as many as 500 million viewers, all participating in a sporting experience of a lifetime. The games will be held in 3 key hubs. The main hub will be in Clark, Pampanga, in the newly constructed New Clark Sports Complex, the secondary hub being the Subic Bay Freeport Zone, and the tertiary hub situated in Metro Manila and nearby areas. And these are the stories for EN Sports. I'm Ben Bernaldez, and I'm 1 with 25.
Thanks, Ben. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also, check out our boards on Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Zepeda. Thanks for joining us.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we're 1 with 25.